unless, there are some things I just say, look, I'm going to let them struggle. There are times, I hate to say this, maybe this is torture. There are times I'm going to let some people struggle through something because I think it's going to be helpful. Like you don't always have to paint the line, the directions out of it. So maybe there's a period of time, you wouldn't let it occur too long, you wouldn't let it jeopardize the company, but you may say, hey, this struggle will be important. Let's see if you can at least come up with some great critical thinking from here. Because, and I would, listen, there's a fourth thing that I would say that I've, and I know people use this term a lot, but developing the ability to think critically and use all that you've seen or learned to help solve a problem or to help look at something differently is absolutely critical. And I don't even know if you're going to be able to use this because I don't want anybody to look at this and take this wrong. But a couple of years ago, I was asked to go back somewhere and speak at a high school around some just life and stuff. And, anytime I think about an audience I'm going to speak to, and you're talking about 17 years old, 16 years old, right. I'm sitting there going, and then the school tells me to approach it like, oh, talk about your career. I go, they don't give a crap about my career.
Right.
I'm a guy with some gray hair that's going to walk up there. All they care about is, do I have something relevant to them? as a school now, and I knew people at the school. It was a school I'd gone to years ago. And I said, tell you what, here's what I'll do. I'll come, but I'm not doing that. I'm not going to get up and start talking about myself. I don't really, what difference does it make? If either I've learned something and I can say something intelligent, if not, then it doesn't matter what jobs I had. So when I went into the auditorium, it was a typical auditorium. They had the ability to gather everybody, right? They're going to tell them to be there, but I noticed that they had the typical, podium and a microphone and all that. And I said, but the stage was raised, and I said, this is going to put me like really at a not a very comfortable, casual place. So I just said, listen, we're going to get rid of all that. I think you can all hear me because they were up towards the front of the thing. And I said, I'll speak loud enough to do this. And if you need to bring over a microphone, then do it. But I went down and I sat on the edge of the stage in the front and just said, look, I thought about this, and I've thought about your generation. And all generations are different, but, people's hierarchy of needs still stays pretty much the same. I said, what I'd like to talk to you about is 4 or 5 things that I think can put you in the top 1% of your generation. Now, but what I want to remind you is you don't have to figure this all out today. I think, how many of you are going to college? It was most of them. I said, okay, go have fun. Major in something you like if you can. If it takes you a couple years to figure it out, cool. Don't quit. And don't worry if you're out of wanderer for a while. But if you can remember these things later, when you say, okay, now I'm ready to go play the game, go jump in, these might help you be in the top of your generation, because now you're Generation Z. And I said, no one's really defined you yet. Spent a lot of time talking about, Gen Y and other gens, but the point is, no one can define you as an individual. People and businesses are constantly making, quote, guesses about what different generations want or how else would they market. So I said, I want to focus on things. And in none of these cases am I going to use myself. I have taken this 2 days to speak to some people who have been hugely successful in different ways. And I'm going to give you an anecdote that's based on their life. And this is everything from people that went to college that didn't, that have done big, successful things, and some common elements between them. I can share with you that I would say these common elements have applied to me, but we don't need to really talk about me. So I did that. And to me, from the engagement that was there, and you can tell like how alert they are, like all of a sudden people sit up, and these are 16, 17-year-olds. You know when they're paying attention, auditorium or not. And so their level of engagement, the test for me was their eyes, their attention, because otherwise I'm just filling an hour. And it was great to interact with them after that, and I was able to, I did one at UCI one time to their business school and asked them to do a visioning exercise. And I thought if 2 or 3 people did it, and there was probably 400 people, 80% of the people did it.
Wow.
Afterwards. Because I gave them my email. I said, well, 3 or 4 people do it. I got so many emails because I told the people I would look at their things and give them comments. It took me 3 weeks because I wanted to provide personal comments.
Right.
I just didn't want to like do some stock thing. But it was really wonderful to see their like, okay, no, I really thought about that visioning exercise. Here's mine. Oh, could you read it? Okay. So to me, that's a much better measure. So, but the thing I probably moved away from it, Christopher, that last thing about critical thinking, by saying here's 5 things that could put you in the top 1% to 2% of your generation when you want to make that move. Not that you aren't as a human already. I'm just talking about, engagement, whatever you want to achieve in your life. The 5 things I gave them, the interaction I had with them afterwards, you could tell the level of critical thinking that they were using to ask their questions. Well, they say, okay, if that's it, how would I do this? Mm-hmm. So they were actually not just kind of just listening robotically. They were thinking about, okay, well then how would I apply it here? If and when I want to apply it. And that's why I gave you the thing about doing the visioning thing to the UCI group. It was, the level of critical thinking that I saw in the emails they sent me, I was stunned. Stunned at how far they drilled down into their own lives. To the opposite, and they were going, I don't even think I was capable of that in college. So I was impressed. I subsequently went to a school. I was asked by a guy that I used to play football against years ago. We don't need to say what year. And but he ended up playing a couple of years for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was a good player. But we actually met in a collision on a field because I was a running back at the time and he was a big linebacker. But subsequently we became friends running track. And this was the South, so we weren't in the same school, obviously, because we ran into each other on a field. But in track, you have more time to talk to people because people were waiting for events. So we did that. So I got to be friends with him, stayed friends with him throughout the years. But turns out after he left sports, then went into teaching, he ended up working at Fedex for many years after that, after he left sports. He decided he wanted to teach in the public school system, and he was teaching at-risk youth at a high school in Mississippi. Mississippi is a very poor state. If you look at it, maybe the poorest state in the United States. It's always down there. That's not to knock Mississippi. A lot of great people from Mississippi. But there are a lot of people that don't have the same resources. I went to those 2 different schools. One of the schools I went to that I spoke the previous day, the high school, it had a sports facility that looked like the University of Alabama's. It had a business building. This is a high school. It had a STEM building. It's a well-funded school. I go to this school in Mississippi. I saw 3 computers. And the kids didn't have them. The teacher had one. Mm-hmm. The level of resources they had compared, it was a different world. I was not going to walk in and talk to them about the same thing that I talked to that school. And I said, this is a totally different thing. Public school, at-risk kids. A lot of these kids are dealing with a lot of different things at home. So what I did was said, look, I'm going to connect first. But the other thing is the lesson's the same, or the opportunity's the same. How do you teach them that knowledge is valuable? So you know that I'm a hobbyist poker player. So I just happened to have cash in my pocket. Not because I was going to the school, because I just did.
Right.
So I started thinking, after I connected with the kids, because you can't judge or assume, but I just said, look, I know a lot of you may think that, I was born with a silver spoon and all that kind of stuff, or, whatever assumptions you make about me that, around success or anything else, because my friend, your teacher, may have told you some things. But here's the real point. And I told him, I said, my father was killed when I was 9. Mm-hmm. My mother raised 6 children by herself. I paid for my own college. There was no help, financially to go to college. And I had to work. And I had to work full-time through school. So I can relate to certain things that sometimes you just got to work through it. But I wanted to connect to say that I didn't come from a couple of parents that had a lot of money or things like that. And I said, how many of you are dealing with situations like that where you may have some gaps in what you're dealing with at home? And a lot of them raised their hands. I said, so whatever that is, just know that while I may not have that same identical experience, I can relate. But I said, I want to teach you about one thing today, if I can, or at least give you an opportunity to look at something. I didn't tell them what it was right then. I said, but let's try something. All of you are studying. What are you studying now? I asked the teacher, like, what is their day? Like, what are their courses? I said, okay, got it. And I just said, look, we're going to play a game. And I'm going to give $20 out for every great answer I get. Now, these kids don't have a lot of money. And you've never watched kids sit up so fast. Their chairs weren't even oriented before, their desk. They moved into straight lines right then. And my colleague, ex guy I played against, but my good friend, was stunned. Like, these kids are, like, he couldn't even hardly get to pay attention to a history lesson. Mm-hmm. They're going, okay, $20, but I'm going to tell you, I just want your answer to be well thought out, because you may not have the experience to get the right answer. But I was asking them questions like, now think about this. 11th and 12th graders in an at-risk high school in Mississippi. I was asking them questions like, why do you think there are more startups today than there were 20 years ago? None of these kids have a startup. The level of their thinking, their effort there. So if they showed good critical thinking, I would hand out the $20. I had to start sending someone to the principal's office to get change to hand out $20, like to make sure I had stuff. I hand out all my money that I had on me in that class, in that hour. But these kids were really, and I said, at the end of that, I just said, listen, all I've tried to demonstrate to you, because some of these lessons and stuff that you take and stuff that you don't really see the value of, you have used some of that today in giving me these answers. I just wanted to tell you that knowledge is valuable. And the way to do that was, I know how much value that, it wasn't about giving you money. It was about showing you that there's a connection between something you do value, which you could go out and buy something for yourself or do something like. I wanted to show you there's a connection between the knowledge that you have in your brain that you're not even thinking about applying to something that you just did for me right there, that you're going to use it, and you can use it to critically think. So they didn't really know what critical thinking was, but I said, what you've done right now is good critical thinking. I share that with you, Christopher, because I kind of assess things today on people I meet and stuff, even through these startups and all these people, is what a level of critical thinking you use. A lot of people use this business planning process or the, the pitch process to try to show that, but you're really looking for that there. How much self-awareness is there in the process? How much do they use it there? How quickly can they adapt? How are they taking current information? I watched somebody present technology and spent a bunch of stuff on engineering recently. I was asked to go into a meeting where I already was working with a company that was doing it 2.5 times more efficiently. I said, whatever you've done, you forgot to look and see what would be the standard for creating something now that's already out there. You're behind. And they were pitching for $15 million. I talked to the guy that asked me to come to the meeting recently. He said, no, they didn't fund that. Because I told him after the meeting, because I was not under any agreement not to, I said, I'm already working with a company that's producing at 1.1 kilowatt hour, and they're producing at 2.9 kilowatts hours per cycle. So it's behind. So it's amazing they could get that far to the point, ask for $15 million. Have hired all these engineers, work these engineering documents, which cost a lot of money, and they're actually behind the market even during the pitch. And that would tell me that the level of critical thinking there, that not be people I'd want to work with, because one of the first things you want to do is, what target are you going to shoot for? If we're going to start a company, we better shoot for something that's better than what's out there.